Alright, everyone, welcome back to Newcastle Fans TV. My name's Matt, and today we're going to be taking a look ahead to this weekend's match against Chelsea.
Newcastle Fans TV.
Yes, welcome back to Newcastle Fans TV. And before we get started on the video, don't forget, if you do enjoy the video at any time today, drop a like on the video and don't forget to get involved in the comments down below. Get a bit of discussion with your fellow Toon fans going. We always like a bit of healthy debate on this channel. So we're taking a look ahead to this weekend's game against Chelsea, top of the table going into the weekend against second bottom. Yes, that's right, Newcastle United, as I'm sure you're all aware, second bottom of the Premier League, which doesn't sound right. It never does. But yes, fighting for our lives already under the new regime. Not their fault, of course. We were in this position beforehand, but third game in charge now, still looking for our first win of the season in the 10th game of the season so far. It's not been a fantastic start. It will be Graham Jones's second game in charge as full head coach after Steve Bruce's departure at the club. We'll see if Jones is left in charge for the game after this, but it's looking likely that he was told that he would take charge of 2 games and 2 games only. So this may be his last chance to impress as a coach at Newcastle United, for now, at the very least. Looking ahead to the weekend then, Chelsea, top of the league, one of the most formidable sides in the world at the moment under Thomas Tuchel. Fantastic start to the season for them, sitting pretty at the top of the table by 1 point ahead of Liverpool. They've lost 1 game, drawn 1 game, and won the other 7 so far. And of course, last time out, they absolutely smacked Norwich 7-0, which is why Norwich are bottom of the table. A quick look at our opponents then before we get on to Newcastle United. Thomas Tuchel has had 45 games in charge of Chelsea in all competitions since he joined halfway through last season. He's taken them to the Champions League final, winning that, of course, beating Man City there. He did lose the FA Cup final against Leicester, but he's got a fantastic record nonetheless at Chelsea. 45 games played, 31 wins, 7 draws and 7 losses, which is just about the polar opposite of Newcastle under Steve Bruce. But yeah, so fantastic management from them. Of course, incredible squad depth there at Chelsea. They've got the cash to splash down in London, and they've got some fantastic new recruits in this season, which we'll talk about in the moment when we get onto the team selection. But they're currently on a 5-game winning streak across all competitions. So that's across the Carabao Cup, the Premier League, and of course the Champions League as well. They're on a fantastic run of form, the polar opposite to what Newcastle United are on currently, but they are missing some key players. Now, we'll get onto the team selection in a moment, but they are going to be missing Timo Werner, Romelu Lukaku, and Christian Pulisic, with N'Golo Kante missing out on the last couple of games as well, for an unknown reason. I'm not entirely sure why he's missed those games. But yeah, 3 big hitters for them. I mean, I know that Werner gets a lot of stick, but I rate him quite highly. And of course, Romelu Lukaku needs no introduction. He's an absolute tank of a man, and I'm not sure that our defence will be able to handle him. So thanking our lucky stars that those 2 aren't involved today. And of course, Christian Pulisic, dangerous on the wing as well. As I mentioned, they beat Norwich 7-0 last week. Fantastic display from them if you've seen the highlights on Match of the Day or elsewhere. Absolutely dominant, and if we play anything like Norwich did, we'll be in for a similar kind of treatment. Goals coming from all over the pitch, both wing-backs getting involved, the midfield, and of course the attack as well, playing without a recognised striker and still scoring 7 goals as well and keeping a clean sheet nonetheless. Chelsea have only conceded 3 goals this season, believe it or not. 3, which is absolutely nuts. 3 goals in 9 games for Chelsea. Of course, the team that holds the best defensive record for a single season in the Premier League way back when Petr Cech was in goal. But yeah, so fantastic start to the season. 3 goals conceded, and they've scored 23 in 9 games. Like I mentioned, 7 coming against Norwich last week, but then the rest of them coming in the previous 8 games. So they're a formidable side to come up against. I'm pretty sure Liverpool are the only side that scored more than them. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. But yeah, sitting pretty at the top of the league. And of course, history is on their side, at least recent history anyway. Both games last season where Chelsea faced Newcastle United, Chelsea came out on top, 2-0 winners in both home and away fixtures. So not looking good for them, for us even, against Chelsea. So getting on to the team selection now. this is what I expect Chelsea to line up with. So it's a similar side to the one that faced Norwich. Of course, we've got Edouard Mendy in goal. At right wing back, Reece James had a fantastic performance last time out against Norwich, got a goal and of course a clean sheet as well. The back three is it's fluid. They've got a lot of depth in there. Christensen can come in any of those places. Malang Sarr as well. But for me, Thiago Silva and Tony Rudiger are probably going to be the nailed-on starters, with the third place taken up by the rotational centre back. So for me, Chalobah has been in good form this season, and with Chelsea looking at this game, seeing that we're second bottom, they're probably going to give minutes to him to get him blooded into that team a little bit more, as he's still technically, one of the youngsters breaking into that team. Needs the Premier League experience. I think they'll probably start Marcos Alonso at left wing back. They started him against Southampton in midweek in the Carabao Cup. Ben Chilwell played their last Premier League game. He's in good form though, Chilwell, so I wouldn't be surprised if he started. But Marcos Alonso has tended to be the first choice under Thomas Tuchel, and of course, he's played most of the games this season. As for the midfield, Kovacic and Jorginho is probably the most likely set up for them. As I mentioned, Kante missing out the last couple of games, unknown reason why. But obviously Ross Barkley getting some minutes in the midweek as well. Could see an appearance off the bench for him. And then a front three, kind of fluid front three. I've kind of set them up here as I imagine they'll line up on the pitch. But yeah, more of a fluid front three of Mason Mount, Callum Hudson-Odoi and Kai Havertz. Hudson-Odoi played very well against Norwich, got himself a goal as well. Wouldn't be surprised to see Ziyech starting though. He played in midweek against Southampton, had a good game, and obviously is a very talented little player. So regardless of who they line up with, really, they are going to be dangerous when we come up against them on Saturday. So that's my predicted lineup. Let me know if you think I'm talking waffle in the comments down below. I'm going to pick out a couple of target men for Chelsea today. So Kai Havertz, while he hasn't been amongst the goals a whole lot, he did score against Southampton midweek. He is a very physical presence. I think he's 6'4", believe it or not. I know he's lanky and thin, but he's a big lad, and he's almost the focal point of this team when they're playing without a recognised striker. So he's a big lad, but he's also fantastic with the ball at his feet and with both feet as well, which could be a real struggle against our centre-backs because they're not the fastest and most agile players, unlike Kai Havertz. So it's going to be a tricky, fast-paced attack for Chelsea, and I think Kai Havertz is going to be the one to watch in that. But also Mason Mount, of course, bagging a hat-trick recently. Fantastic form for him after a slow start to the season. He'll be wanting to kick on and get a couple of goals against Newcastle to pad his stats up as well. He'll be looking to distribute the play as well as finish the moves off. I think he could be a real dangerous player for us. So that midfield needs to pick up on his drifting runs. I expect Isaac Hayden to be sticking to him like a hot glue. So he's a danger man. And of course, from the midfield, Kovacic got himself a couple of assists in the Norwich 7-0 as well. He's the main man for distributing alongside Jorginho. There needs to be a midfield press. The strikers need to get back and work. If we're going to get anything out of this game, it's going to be a hard-earned point or 3 points. The whole 11 for Newcastle needs to be on their A game, pressing from the front, from the minute go. We need to keep the energy up from the start and not let our defence go, because honestly, we don't struggle going forwards this season. It's shipping the amount of goals that we have this season so far, and I'll get onto that shortly. But we need to make sure that we shore up the defence, hopefully, keep that score as low as possible on the Chelsea end and try and bag a couple of goals ourselves. Before we get on to Newcastle, though, mentioning Chelsea's attacking play, the main threat really for me that we'll struggle with is the wing-backs. So Chelsea have some of the most attacking wing-backs in the league, Reece James especially. He plays as a right wing-back, but to be honest, he's a central midfielder, he's a right wing-back, he's a right winger, he's almost a striker at times. He's all over. And if he's attacking down that right-hand side, he's a quick, powerful player. If Matt Ritchie keeps his place at left wing-back, we are going to struggle heavily because he'll have to deal with not only the winger, but Reece James providing support on our left-hand side, their right-hand side as well. And I think a lot of the threat is going to come down that side. And I think that's why we should start Miguel Almiron, and I'll get onto the team selection very shortly. But Miguel Almiron, a lot of pace, a lot of energy in that team. He's not the best defensively, but he will chase Reece James up and down that pitch for 90 minutes if you ask him to. So Reece James, a real one to look out for there. Hopefully Tuchel sees that Cesar Azpilicueta is going to be the better option at right wing back. Fantastic player in his own right, but to be honest, I don't think he'll provide as much of an attacking threat as Reece James does. But yeah, so the worry for me is the attacks that are going to come down Chelsea's wings with their wing backs. So we've got hopefully Graham Jones knows that. I mean, he's a decent enough coach. I'm sure he's analysed Chelsea's games and sees that as a major threat. To be honest, they've got threats all over the pitch, so it's going to be a struggle. But yeah, targeting those wing backs, especially if on the counter attack as well, because I imagine we will sit back and try and play the counter game. We'll watch for those wing backs getting forward, pulling themselves out of position, and then hopefully our wingers and Saint-Maximin can exploit the space left in behind when they do. Now, moving on to Newcastle United, then the bit we've all been waiting for. Now, we talked about Chelsea so far in the video, and I mentioned Graham Jones at the very start. I said it's probably going to be his last game in charge as head coach at Newcastle United, and that's because we're looking to appoint a new manager in the coming weeks. There's nothing been announced, nothing been confirmed, but when Jones was appointed as a manager in the first place, or as caretaker manager in the first place, he said that, he'd been told that he was going to take charge of the Palace game and the Chelsea game, and then we'll see what happens with the future. So it's probably going to be his last game in charge. So he'll be looking to go out with a bang and impress the new manager that's going to come in enough that he will keep him on the coaching staff. So I expect that we'll go quite defensive today because we're 10 games without a win, and a draw against top of the league wouldn't be the worst result. I'm not saying we should play for a draw, always play for the win, but I can imagine damage limitation is going to, from the get-go, is going to be the game plan for us today. We'll, try and play the counter-attacking game with Callum Wilson, Saint-Maximin, and perhaps Joe Linton or Almiron. But yeah, it's going to be about damage limitation today, and I'm sure Graham Jones will go back with that traditional back five, hopefully without Emil Kraft anywhere near the team, but we'll wait and see about that. As for our form going into this game, as I mentioned, 10 games without a win, the second worst goal difference in the league, which would be the worst had Norwich not shipped 7 goals last week against Chelsea, no less. So maybe after Saturday night, we will be the worst goal difference in the league. But yes, 10 games without a win. And of course, a disappointing result last time out against Crystal Palace. Could have been even worse, though. It wasn't the finest performance for a Newcastle United team that I've ever seen. But we'll be looking to kick on and hopefully turn things around before this new manager comes in and play for a point, if not all 3 points against Chelsea. The positives, though, for Newcastle United, outside the top 10, the current top 10 teams going into this weekend, only Watford and Villa have scored more goals than us in the games played so far. So, like I mentioned earlier, we don't really have a problem going forwards and putting goals in the back of the net, especially with Callum Wilson in the team. It's just making sure we don't concede others at the other end. We saw against West Ham, against Southampton, we had the advantage by scoring goals, but we just blew it. We threw it away. And yeah, it cost us some valuable points. We're yet to keep a clean sheet in the Premier League this year, which is just a shocking stat when you look at some of the teams that have kept a clean sheet this year. It's, yes, we've been without our first choice goalkeeper. Yes, we're chopping and changing managers and defenses and stuff, but really, you've got in 10 games, you've got to be keeping at least one clean sheet. I mean, come on. If you can't keep a clean sheet, you can't win games. You'll win a couple of games, but you still got to outscore the opposition. If they score, if they score 1, you've got to score 2. I know I sound like Michael Owen when I say that, but you've got to make it as easy as you can for yourself by not conceding goals at the back. And we just haven't been able to do that this season. It's just been the monkey on our back that we can't seem to shake. We just silly goals, silly mistakes, silly penalties, just things that cost us points that we really, really need to be holding on to if we want to stay up this season. But yeah, clean sheet has to be the priority, especially against one of the most informed sides in the league. But the worrying thing is, I mentioned that we're playing one of the most informed sides in the league. We've played the out of form sides in the league. We've played 17th, 16th, 15th, 14th, and 13th. And taken 4 points out of a possible 15 from those games. And if you chuck in Burnley, who we played in the Cup, who had sat just above us, the place above us, we didn't even get anything out of that game. It would have been a point had it been a league game, but it was 0-0 in one of the most boring games I've ever watched. And it was an absolutely shambolic performance. And Burnley are one of the worst teams in this division this year. But we're looking worse. Somehow, with the quality in our squad, we're looking worse. So yeah, it has to be a win for Newcastle today, for Newcastle on Saturday, or at the very least, a draw. I'm not being optimistic. I don't think that's realistic, but it has to be for us to start kicking on and having any chance of survival. We have to start picking up points in tough games like this one. And we've done it in the past under different managers, so why not? Why not on Saturday? Why not? Moving on to the team selection then. I've gone for what I want to see, not what I think realistically what will be picked on the day. So I'm not entirely sure if he's back fit yet. We'll have to wait and see come the 2 o'clock match day lineup announcement. But Martin Dubravka has been recovering from an injury for a very long time now. He's been back on the training pitch for a few weeks. I'd like to see him back in the starting lineup as soon as possible. Hopefully, we can see him return against Chelsea because we really do need him. Nothing against Carl Darlow. I think he's a good goalkeeper, but we really need our top performers, and Dubravka is without doubt our number one goalkeeper at the club at the moment. So if he's fit enough to start, I'd love to see him come into the first team for this game. Like I said, I think Graham Jones will go with a back five, and I do think we need a back five to combat Chelsea's wing backs. Manquillo's been in a relatively decent form and is probably our best right back at the club, which is saying something at the moment. But yeah, so he probably gets a start at right wing back for me. And then with the back three defenders, obviously, captain Jamal Lascelles keeps his place. Kieran Clark's been a bit shaky for me in the last few weeks. He hasn't looked the same since he had that injury a while back. And yeah, he's just not as solid as he once was. So I'd like to see the defensive solidity of Federico Fernandez coming back in. And I think Fabian Schär would be a good addition to the squad because he's been out of the squad for a while now. He's had a good couple of performances with his international side, but we're going to need a lot of distribution from the back line, relieving us of that pressure, not just lumping it up the pitch, but carrying the ball forwards and distributing it to players that will be able to take it up the pitch for us from that and release us from that Chelsea presser. So Fabian Schär could be that player that fills in that third spot for me. I mentioned Reece James earlier and how attacking he is. Personally, I'd love to see Jamal Lewis reintroduced to the starting lineup. I know I've said this for the last few weeks now. Matt Ritchie, while he's creating a lot of chances going forwards, he's not quick enough and not defensively minded enough to take on a team like Chelsea. Jamal Lewis, while he's not the best player in the world, he's quick and he is a natural defender and he's decent at getting forwards as well on the counter-attack. So I'd love to see him reintroduced. It'll be a tricky game. It'll be throwing him in at the deep end almost, but I think it would be a good game to bring him back in for. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree or disagree with that decision. But personally, I would love to see Lewis back in the starting lineup. As for the midfield, though, Isaac Hayden has to start. We've got to have someone breaking up that midfield press. And I think he's the player to do it. And alongside him, I'd love to see Joe Willock starting. Obviously benched in the last game by Graham Jones with his first team selection as caretaker manager. It's a bit of a surprise to me, but Willock hasn't been in the best form. But we know what he can do, and we know he's good at carrying the ball forwards as well, which if we're going to be playing counter-attacking football, he's the kind of player you want in your team, not Jeff Hendrick and not Sean Longstaff. So Joe Willock is my pick for that other midfield slot. With a front three, or probably in defence, it's going to be a 5-4-1, but in the front three of Almiron, saint-maximin and Wilson. No need to justify my choice of Wilson. We all know he's going to start if he's fit. Fantastic goal against Palace, and I think it was something ridiculous, like 20 goals and 26 starts for him. So, obviously our goal getter and needs to start this game. Saint-Maximin got subbed off in the last game, so hopefully he'll have a bit fresher legs and, can provide some of that attacking talent that we've seen so far this season. He can provide a bit of threat on the counter and, of course, exploiting the space in behind the wing backs when they push forward as well, taking on those three centre backs. Rudiger is a reckless defender. He's going to dive into challenges, probably get himself booked in this game. So if Saint-Maximin can target him, Rudiger's a good defender, but he will dive into challenges. So if Saint-Maximin can bait him into a challenge, a silly challenge, and get him sent off, I think that could be a good avenue for us to exploit. And of course, Chalobah, with the lack of experience in the first team with Chelsea as well. Obviously, Thiago Silva doesn't quite have the legs anymore, but he's got the experience and the nous to defend against a player like that. But yeah, I mentioned a little bit earlier, Almiron. I'd like to see Almiron starting this game. It could be Almiron, it could be Joe Linton, because personally, I think Joe Linton played quite well against Spurs, was unlucky to be dropped against Crystal Palace. But I'd love to see Almiron starting in, a left wing or almost a left centre mid role when we're in defence, tracking back and helping out the left back or the left wing back when those fullbacks get forward, because he's got energy to be running up and down the pitch all game, and also the pace to provide the counter-attack as well when we do get the opportunity to. So that's my starting 11. Let me know in the comments down below if you agree with that, if there's anyone you'd like to see starting, if you think that, you know, my team selection is just absolute waffle, if you think, you know, we should be starting the kids, whatever it is, let me know in the comments down below. And of course, get your score predictions in nice and early as well. Personally, I always like to make 2 score predictions, 1 realistic, 1 optimistic. So this week, my optimistic prediction, having to think about it realistically, we're probably not going to score that many goals because it's Chelsea. They've only conceded 3 all season. However, they did lose to West Brom last season under Tuchel, and they shipped 5 against West Brom as well. So you never know. You never, ever know. So for me, I'm going to go for a cautiously optimistic prediction of 1-0 to Newcastle with Callum Wilson bagging an early goal and us clinging on for dear life for the entirety of the rest of the game. For my realistic prediction, though, it's not looking good, unfortunately. I know you're all going to call me a pessimist, but Chelsea are such a fantastic attacking team, and we've just shipped goals after goals. You know, we're conceding 4 against West Ham. How many are we going to concede against Chelsea? I'm going to go for a 3-0 Chelsea win as my realistic prediction. Obviously, call me all the names in the sun for being a pessimist in the comments down below. But realistically, I can't see us getting this from this game. I would love to get a point, 3 points from this, you know, kickstart our season finally after 10 games. But yeah, it's not looking good for us. Coming up in the league after Chelsea, though, that's where the real graft starts. You know, Brighton away is going to be a very tough game. Brighton starting well to the season. But, you know, you look at that squad and you think of the teams that we've played, Brighton are probably in and around that same kind of quality. They're playing well under Potter. I rate him as a manager, but we've got to be taking at least a point away from that. And then followed by Brentford, Arsenal, Norwich and Burnley. Brentford, you know, promoted team this year, playing very good, very nice football. But they are vulnerable at the back, as we've seen a few times this season. Arsenal in great form. Can't see us getting anything from that game personally. But then Norwich and Burnley, they're the key ones for me. You know, Norwich below us in the table currently, Burnley the place above us in the table. We've got to be getting at least 6 points from the, you know, that run of 5 games, 6, 7 points from that. Preferably 6 points from Norwich and Burnley. But, you know, Chelsea is going to be a very difficult game. You know, without doubt. Hopefully we can get a result, but realistically, probably not going to happen given that their form that they're on, the form that we're in. Then again, stranger things have happened. We need to break the duck eventually, so why not this week? But yeah, this has been the preview for Newcastle Fans TV. Looking forward to this weekend's game against Chelsea. Let me know in the comments your score predictions and how optimistic you're feeling ahead of the game. We'll catch up with you guys after the game on the fan reaction show to see if your predictions were right and if that optimism has been well and truly crushed. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. As always, if you haven't already, drop a like on the video and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We're constantly hitting those landmarks. We're pushing for more subscribers constantly so we can keep providing good content to you guys. If you enjoyed it, drop a like, subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to subscribe to NFTV Extra, our sister channel as well. We'll have loads of content coming up on match day as well. There's a couple of lads going to the game. So we'll bring that all to you on Saturday as well as the watch along as well. But for now, thanks so much for watching and I'll catch you in the next video.